Hello, everyone. So my name is Tomáš Sušánka. I am the CTO of Trezor, and I want to tell you a few thoughts about usability versus security in storing Bitcoin. So this is the question, right? What is the safest method to store Bitcoin? And I would argue secure self-custody. So you probably understand what secure means, right? I mean, the attackers are not able to get to your Bitcoins. It's basically unhackable and so on. And I think you probably understand secure. But I sometimes feel that we use the word self-custody a lot, but we do not really give an explanation what that is. So I want to start there. And to explain you what a self-custody is, I want to introduce you a small town called Svitavy in the Czech Republic. Anyone from there? No? Woo! Okay, hi. Good for you. Why I'm talking about this small town, right? I mean, Svitavy had about 2 million euros stored in this bank, Spare Bank. It's a bank from Russia. I don't really know the background why they had their money there. Probably, some good conditions and so on. Like, why not? All good. And it worked fine until this happened, right? The Russian-Ukrainian conflict, and this created a lot of panic, and many clients of this particular bank started to be very nervous about their money, about their wealth. And they did the old-fashioned bank run. So bank run is basically when people, if all the people are run at the bank and they try to withdraw their money or send them elsewhere and so on. And it was so many people that the bank basically had to, pause any withdrawals or any bank transfers and so on, right? They basically had to pause the whole thing. And this is very problematic because people couldn't get to their money, right? I mean, and it was their money. I mean, it was their money in the bank. Like, how come that this can happen? And it's a little bit more complicated than that because the funds are insured up to 100,000 euros in the Czech Republic. I think it's similar amounts, give or take, around Europe. But still, imagine, so you're saving for your whole life. You have some cash in the bank, and suddenly you need it, and you're not going to get it because this is happening. So most of the people eventually got the money. I have no idea how it's going to end up with the town of Svitavy. They will probably get some parts, I don't know, but you probably get the point, right? So now I'm getting to the fact, what is the self-custody? So self-custody is basically ownership. And what is important, that there is no middleman. There is no intermediary. You and you only own your wealth, right? So that is self-custody, that you are able to move your funds, operate with them like in any way that you want, when you want, right? So that's what is self-custody is. And so that was like an introduction, and now I'm like finally getting to the talk. So what I want to put together is this very little graph. I have to be careful not to fall down. So on the left side, on the axis, you have security, right? Like as secure as it can be. At the bottom, you have usability. How user-friendly it is. How can you use it? How can you use it in a usable manner? And before we dive into that, I want to talk about this quote because it's my favorite one, and I really live by this motto even before I joined Trezor because I really believe that. And it says, "Security at the expense of usability comes at the expense of security." I will give you a minute to digest that because it's kind of counterintuitive, but let me maybe repeat that. Security at the expense of usability comes at the expense of security. What that basically means is that if you make something more secure at the cost of usability, at the cost of the user friendliness, you're actually decreasing the security because the users will shoot themselves in the leg, right? So I hope you get that because it's really, really important. So back to this. So I would argue, I want to start with the top left corner. And I want to put this there, right? I mean, if you lock yourself in a cave and you remember your private keys to Bitcoin, and that's it, I mean, that's very secure, right? I mean, that's not really hackable because how can you hack that, right? I mean, you are alone in a cave. Like, the picture is not even good. Like, all the folks around shouldn't be there. Just imagine that you are alone in a cave. So I would argue that that's the most secure solution. But is that usable? Like, not very, right? I mean, if you're alone in a cave and you're, I don't know, doing all the cryptography math to send a transaction on a cave board, that doesn't really make sense, right? So secure, but not usable. Then we have all those like DIY solutions, right? Like do-it-yourself solutions. Like you take an air-gapped laptop, install Linux on it, make it super, super secure. And I mean, that's great, but it really depends on your expertise, right? I mean, if you're working in Linux for 20, 30 years, it's probably somewhere higher. But if you're not, it's probably somewhere lower, right? So, I mean, please don't take this like in a dogmatic way. It's just like to illustrate the idea. It's somewhere in this horizon. Again, usability, probably not so good. A good example of that is at the beginning of a year, Luke Dash Jr., a Bitcoin Core developer, was tweeting this, that he lost his Bitcoins because of his DIY setup. And maybe he's faking it, right? Maybe he just made it up, so it seems that he doesn't have Bitcoins, but that's what happened. So I would actually argue against that as well. And then on the right side of things, on the usability side of things, we have all those apps like Coinbase and Revolut, right? And they are really UX perfect, like they are, because that's their like core thing. But that is not a self-custody, right? You're depending on them that they will give you your money when you ask for them. And I don't really want to make this keynote about like don't use Revolut at all costs or whatever, because you all are anyway. But use those for small amounts, right? Use them for amounts that you are comfortable with having in your physical wallet. That is fine. I have nothing against that. But for the larger sums, what an ugly picture. Well, for the larger sums, you have hardware wallets. And hardware wallet is something we actually invented. Like, we are the first hardware wallet out there. And a hardware wallet is a single-purpose device. It's a special device that you have at the size of a flash drive, let's say. And it does one thing, and one thing only, and that's storing your private keys. With those keys, you can then spend your Bitcoin. And there's really a big difference between this concept and the Coinbase, Revolut, whatever, because Coinbase and Revolut and whatever, they have these keys on their servers, right? And you're depending on them to actually, sign the transactions for you. This is not the case for those devices, because you have those at home. The private keys live there, and if you put it in a drawer, if you unplug it and keep it in a drawer, I mean, that's it, right? It's there, powerless. It's yours. That's the key point. And that's basically the goal of this talk, right? I would argue that hardware wallets sit at the top right corner. That's good usability, good security. And like there is a small gap between the cave, right? I mean, yeah, if you prefer that, then great. But I think it's really hard to explain that hardware wallet gives you perfect security, but at the same time they give you the perfect usability because you're able to do transactions every day or as often as you want. So that's the message. Use a hardware wallet for larger amounts, for your savings, and for anything that is more than a few bucks, and ideally one from Trezor. Thank you.